we'll get into it shortly. Our doctor on call is in the house today, ready for you. Today we get to hang out with the founder of the Realignment Program and also a Kingdom Life coach, Judy Muzungu. Judy, how are you doing?
Niko salama sana na shukuru.
You say me Happy New Year?
Actually, we have not met this year.
Amani, Happy New Year.
It's nice to hang out with you again.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
I have an interesting question for you.
Yes.
Has somebody ever broken your heart?
Oh, yes.
You know me, somebody has never broken my heart. So you tell me, mtu sikiaje?
Where. Loss of appetite.
Aya.
Hey.
Ati nikose kukula juu ya mtu.
Kukula, hey. Loss of appetite. Some people even fall sick. Some people withdraw totally. For spiritual people, let me say, you know, many times before we go into a relationship, si umeomba.
Yeah.
Alafu yende ikose kuwaka. Unajua unajam mpaka na God.
Wow. What?
Yes, because you don't understand why didn't it work. Yet God, I prayed. I thought I had a witness. Maybe if it's a relationship that happened within the church community, other people knew.
Yeah.
And then it ends. Even God stops making sense.
It's a serious thing, huh?
It's a serious thing.
I've even had people get sick because they have a broken heart.
Yes. Because your emotions have been wounded. So what happens, even physically, there's a chance that you'll get affected. Yeah? So yes, that's why people fall sick.
Okay.
And then mentally, you stop thinking highly of yourself. Some people even totally lose drive. You'll find that because someone has lost a relationship or something, because mentally they are affected, they are not able to function. If they were in school, their performance dips. If they are working, they're not also performing at their best.
At their best,
yes.
Yeah. As we get into this conversation, able to just tell me, has somebody ever broken your heart? What was that like for you? What process did you go through? How long did it take you to find healing? Share that story with us on 20316 for SMS and WhatsApp 0786 316 316. So do people heal totally from a broken heart, or do they still carry scars and baggages as they move into another relationship?
I think that would depend. It's important for every individual to actually take time to stop and heal. You understand? What that looks like is coming to that place where you can accept what happened. You have to take that journey that now sits back and almost looks at this scenario from the outside looking in and ask yourself, okay, fine, I went into this relationship. How did I go into it? What was the state of my heart when I was going into it? How was this other person when they were, you understand? Like literally you have to reason out that space, reason out that relationship, so that if perchance, because again, it could be that there were things that you ignored that you should have taken into account. So then you can say, yeah, this was my part in this story. I should have been able to see this red flag. Then why didn't I see it? The reason why sometimes we don't see the red flags is because where we are at emotionally as well. When you're wounded, you will attract another wounded person.
Yeah.
So you have to introspect and ask yourself, where am I at first, or where was I at the point that I was getting into that relationship? What red flags were there that I didn't see, and why didn't I see those red flags? And then you also have to ask yourself what happened in the course of that relationship. Usually because you are coming from a place of neediness.
Yeah.
When you function within that relationship, you don't have boundaries. Because you're seeking for validation from the other person.
Yeah.
And that's why sometimes you tend to realize that people are in a relationship and someone idolizes this other individual, almost becoming a god with a small g. That tells you that the person is not grounded in and of themselves. They haven't come into that space of knowing who they are in the first place as an individual before they even try to relate with another person. So what happens, your whole sense of identity comes from the fact that you're with a person. In fact, it is drawn from the other person.
Very true.
So the need for validation. That's why many people, if you listen to them later on, they're like, I went through this, I went through this, I went through this. Why didn't you leave? I don't know.
Okay. Okay. I'm just wondering, does it get harder depending on where the relationship was? I hear people who they had gotten all the way to the place where the man had proposed, and then unasikia alioa mtu mwingine. You know, there are those who, in the initial stages of the relationship, wanaachana. So does it depend on where you are in the relationship? Does the degree of hurt and the time to recover depend on where you are, or it depends on personalities?
I think both ends do matter. How far the relationship is. You cannot, for example, compare someone who is going through a divorce and someone who is going through a relationship that probably was just at the verge of marriage, and someone who went into a 6-month relationship. Again, that of course is going to be a pointer. But again, someone's personality is going to determine how they are going to handle it. And thirdly, where this person was coming from. If that person had come from a train of rejection, the third breakup will hit them harder. Or the second breakup, whatever, will hit them harder, because for them it's a pattern and they don't know what to do. Okay.
Are those the kind of situations I've had all sorts of stories where people say, oh, all men are dogs, all women are just gold diggers. You know, if this happens several times, is this the kind of situation that gets somebody to that place where now wanasema wataki hata maneno ya wanawake, wataki hata maneno ya wanaume?
Yes, it can get there because of the trail of experiences. But then now you need to ask yourself, why is it that you're attracting the same person over and over again? It points to something that is within you that seems to stand in the way of your judgment.
But you know, at that time, Judy, the last person you want to look at and say maybe the problem is with them is you.
Yes.
Because you're the one who's hurt.
That's true.
You know, and you're always pointing at the other person and thinking it's the other person.
That's true. And that's why sometimes getting external help then becomes important. You understand? Because if you find external help, then what we do as coaches is that we go back to your childhood. Usually the inability to attach comes from childhood wounds. Say, for example, they're dealing with a lady, and probably they had a dicey relationship with their father. It becomes very difficult for them to connect with a male figure. And sometimes it happens without their knowledge.
Okay.
So just going back to the childhood and then being able to understand and trace what your childhood was like. And then there are also people who had a very rosy picture of their father, but because sometimes the mother who raised them spoke against the father. So they are a bit confused about male authority, male figure and stuff like that. Again, it becomes very difficult for them to engage. Why? Because they're not able to see, one, they relate to their caring father, but then again they begin to think of a man as being irresponsible because that's what they have been told. So you have to unravel it and see, where did this thing come from? Change perspective, help them to change their perspective, to have correct perspective of what a father should be, of what a man, you understand, or what a man is, or what a father is, so that then you demystify to them. And because we are in a Christian station, I can be safe to say this, the real reason is because sometimes we remove the place of God.
Yeah, true.
Because any human being, a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, I dare say even a spouse will wrong you.
Yeah.
If you have a proper relationship with God, and I'm not talking about, many people will say we have a relationship with God, we are born again, we are waking up and using prayer points at 3 a.m.
I'm telling you.
But we don't have the place of intimacy with God. Because we have restricted him, Pastor Jemo, to God just being a father.
Yeah.
So we haven't experienced him as a father, as a friend, as a lover of our soul. So that place of intimacy with God, if you're able to get it, then you can place any other person in the right place. That means that it will give you capacity to overcome the flaws.
I'm just curious about something you've said.
Yes.
based on somebody's background and where they are coming from, would you say then there are people who are predisposed to a breakup because of how they've been brought up, how they've been nurtured, how they've been cultured? They have things in their lives they don't know are there. But because those things are there, whatever relationship they get into, because of where they're coming from, it will most likely end up in a breakup.
Yeah, but that's true, and sadly. And if I always tell people, it's always good to take time to introspect. Anytime you see a pattern that doesn't look like what you want, take time to introspect and ask yourself, where is this thing coming from?
Okay.
Yeah, because what happens, maybe someone like that either went through a very difficult childhood, and yes, they grew up and they really desire to connect, but their emotional walls around them.
Yeah.
So have you ever met someone, you feel like you're talking, but you really don't know them because you can't quite get through to them?
They're shielding almost everything.
Yes, yes. So you're even sitting next to this person. They look beautiful, they look handsome. You're praying to God and asking God, why isn't this thing just connecting? And it is the emotional connection that is just not happening.
The Bluetooth device has not connected successfully.
Unashanga, nini, unakunywa kahawa, date after date after date. And that's why sometimes people get perplexed. Like, I was with him, and then all of a sudden, it's, and we need to talk about levels of connection now that we're talking about, because for a relationship to be successful, of course there has to be physical attraction, and I'm not necessarily looking at the 36, 24, 36, where even the physical values agree.
You and your gun here, 34, 26.
36, 24, 36. See, the bust, the waist, and the hip. So you're looking for a perfect size 8.
Size 8 no DJ more.
So you move away from that and begin to ask, what are the values?
What are the values?
Then you go to intellectual connection. Because whether we like it or not, Pastor Jemo, you guys are going to be you must be able to have a conversation that makes sense. Sometimes we tend to ignore that, and that's why sometimes you find that people are in a marriage, but when they come to the office, they find a woman who is sharp. And you cannot have a conversation. You get? So it just opens doors for other things. So let's talk about intellectual connection. It's important. Have someone who you can have an intellectually stimulating conversation with.
A couple of people responding this morning. This one says, I had my heartbreak last December. From then to now,
nowhere near healing.
Nowhere near healing. Oh, from then to nowhere healing, I'm even having a hard time praying and trusting God on that issue. What would you tell this young lady?
But I just want to tell you that last December, today is
in February.
It's only 2 months. It's okay. Just take time. And I understand you probably just feeling, because you probably prayed, and let's just demystify that part. Many times, yes, when you're getting into a relationship, we have prayed. And then when the relationship doesn't work out, you're like, God, where is this? I want us to understand that you prayed, but free will. God has given us free will. At the end of the day, whether a relationship, whether a marriage will succeed, will depend on the will of your will and the will of the other person. And that's why we're talking about the levels of connection. The will. You have to have the same vision. You have to be going towards the same direction. If someone's will disconnects at that particular point, get to that place where you understand this had nothing to do with God. This person exercised their free will and they did whatever they needed to do. Do you know, Pastor Jemo, I went through a breakup before I got married. And the people around me were telling me, Judy, the right person will come. Let me tell you, it doesn't make sense. But today, hey, I know that statement is true. Let me encourage you, my sister. Yes, it is true. That the right person comes. I cannot trade my husband for anyone today. Pastor Jemo, I went through 4 years of not having a job after marriage. It is that man who stood with me.
Wow.
When I started going on YouTube, My husband somehow is the one who knew how to connect sound and put the camera because he has been in those settings. If ningeenda kujitafutia mtu wa corporate, are you seeing what I would have gotten myself into? Today, if I'm going for an interview anywhere, my husband accompanies me because he understands that this is a ministry and he can pray over me.
Wow.
So, can you imagine if I had just missed it?
Yes.
I'm telling you, my sister, be encouraged. The right person will come.
The right person will come. We are hanging out with Judy Muzungu, Kingdom Life Coach and founder of the Realignment Program. We are talking about heartbreaks and how to pick up from there and move on. Thank you for those who are sharing their experiences.